Okay. So we're just going to jump right in. Today's panel, we're going to talk about creativity. And these two gentlemen, I think, are the perfect example of creative brand entrepreneurs that we could really, if you don't mind, we're just going to kind of riff and talk about your guys' journeys and how you have created the brands that you have. The first question I have is really, it's more, I'm going to talk about how when I came to Hall of Flowers today, this is the first time I've ever been here. And something I noticed was, and I'm definitely dating myself, but this feels like the 90s and early 2000 trade shows that the apparel industry used to have before all the major brands came. And something that I noticed the most about them was they have really, in this spaces, have taken over and given a really true vibe for each of their brands in ways that I don't think we've seen in a long time in trade shows. And I was curious if there was anything that stood out to you guys about this industry and how they're starting to cultivate their own, vibe and their voices, and also like how they're doing things, because they really truly seem like they're swinging from the fences in a great way. Kind of starting out and being a little more entrepreneurial in the way that they're doing things. And I was curious if you guys noticed the same, and if so, were there anything that stuck out to you? I'll start with you, Andy.
Yeah, I came from a streetwear clothing background. 10 years ago, I had my own clothing brand, and this definitely gives me the nostalgic vibes of how I used to go to the Agenda trade show or trade shows at Magic, the rawness of it, seeing different vendors here, seeing the busyness of how people are designing packaging, even the way people are designing packaging. I think I see the thing where things are kicking in was, I guess, how all the regulations are coming in with packaging. So now people are doing it a certain way. But I see a lot of people just doing loud, colorful. Those are the booths that are standing out. Those are the busiest guys I see, and it's kind of similar to what we did when I had a clothing brand. Yeah, definitely. What about you, Jesse? Was there anything that stood out to you from a branding side? It seems like a lot of people are taking a very strong point of view. There is the group that's all fuzzy and has like a headless nude woman on it, and it's pretty, it was awesome because it definitely brings you right in. And I didn't know if you noticed anything the same as Andy.
Yeah, I think at the trade show, but just also in general, for what we do, we're always watching the market and what's around us. And there is this 90s feel for everything, the nostalgic look. But, it's probably just because the same way that we are. It's like the people have grown up and they're making what they loved when they were a kid. And that's kind of inspiring this generation's, and it's kind of coming back, I feel like, full circle.
Definitely. With that being said, you perfectly segued it. There seems to be a lot of inspiration that people are seeing here from other brands and other, cultural moments. You both have really created some amazing brands that you definitely have huge followings for. And I know that both of you have done multiples in the last, umpteenth years. How do you guys stay fresh, and what is it that keeps that inspiration moving for you? What inspires you daily? Because I know at times when you're the brand, it can be a little daunting to come up with a new idea, fresh idea all the time. What are those things that you guys do? Jesse, if you don't mind, I'll start with you.
Yeah. I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I feel like it's my favorite part of it all is that I love coming up with the new ideas, and I love loving it, if that makes sense. But I think also another thing is your team, keeping some younger guys around, keeping it fresh. Something I think is sick, someone might just, because I don't have yes men around me, someone will be like, dude, that's whack. And then, you don't got to just take their what they say and then jump into it. You got to bounce that off of what you know and what you love and kind of find a through line. But I just think my answer to that would just be that I love coming up with the new stuff and figuring out that puzzle each time.
Yeah, the initial stage is so fun because you don't really have those guardrails yet. You're not thinking well, where's this going to go? Who's going to buy it? Why are you going to sell this? How much am I going to sell it for?
Thinking about that too much sometimes can ruin it for me.
Totally.
Trying to be well, what will sell the most units, or what will everyone love? It's just what do we love, and then focusing on that, and until you kind of find a brand identity and people can find their way of loving it too.
Totally. How about you, Andy?
I think for me, I always say that I feel like my best work is still ahead of me, right? That drives me to continue to keep going. Even with my newest concept now, I feel like it's my strongest one I've done so far. But I've been doing this for like 20 years already, and everyone's like, how are you still doing this, or how are you still developing new concepts? I guess for me, it's like I'm still chasing that high at the same time, and that's what gets me going. And I'm still, I'm still like a little kid watching, eating. I saw a new cartoon that I get, excited about, or a new iPhone drops. Like that same feeling was when I'm working and designing and creating. I'm just chasing that feeling every single time.
That's awesome.
You mentioned the idea of maintaining doesn't, that's not enough for you. Like that's what I mean. I just because I can relate to like the idea of, hey, this is working and this has worked in the past, so let's just keep the train going. It's like, no, what's the next thing? What's a bigger idea? I really like what you said there about like my best thing is in the future. I don't know how I'm horribly saying how you said it, but that is cool.
Yeah, I think for me, I've jumped in a lot of different industries now. So when I first dropped out of school, I became a real estate appraiser as my first entrepreneurship. I'm like, hey, the money's good, but this career sucks. I don't like this. So I was like, I'm going to follow what I enjoy doing, and I saw a gap in apparel. So when I jumped in streetwear, I was like, hey, well, how do I apply what I know to this? And 10 years ago, as I entered the food industry, I saw a gap in that, and I was like, hey, if I create this ice cream store, I'm going to make the store all black. I'm going to add these funny quotes. I'm going to play hip hop and EDM. If you go into Baskin Robbins or Cold Stone, they don't really play music or anything in there. And I was like, I want something that's more of my vibe. I want these ice cream flavors I want the ice cream to be blue. I want it to look good on camera. I want it to be fun and exciting. And I think for every industry that I'm looking forward to, I'm like, hey, if I can come in and disrupt it in one way or another, that's what's getting me excited to jump in and do something different. The same thing what we talked about earlier. I launched, I think about 2 years ago, I launched the first NFT restaurant, and everyone thought I was crazy, but for that moment in time, everyone was talking about it, and it was fun to see everyone's reaction.
Yeah, and that was something that was really impressive. That was the world's first NFT restaurant ever, and now you are international with that, right? Yeah,
so I recently sold the brand, so a team in Korea acquired it, but we have one store here in Long Beach, and then we have 3 stores in the Philippines and 1 in South Korea right now.
That kind of brings me to my next question. When you guys are developing brands and you sell them or you move on from them, how do you kind of cope with the idea of moving away from that? Because a lot of times, like for instance, you two are both very much your brand, and people are drawn to the brand because of you. How are you able to pull away from that and then move on to the next? Is it about just evolving? Because I know that's something that, Jesse, you've spoken about a few times, about evolving. What's next when you took Sunday and started doing that? No,
for sure. It's especially when, like you said, you are the brand as well. I just try to be honest as much as possible with myself and with what I'm doing with the new project, but I had to be very vulnerable about who I am and what I want to do, because at the end of the day, it was still a massive marketing plan that was really just being honest, and had to go from party frat crazy guy to hey guys, I don't drink and I'm actually really into creating products and design and and kind of take them on that journey. But I think at the end of the day, I look at life like it's a bunch of chapters. It's just, for me, it's easy to move on to the next project, kind of like what you were saying. You have that fire inside. It's almost an issue sometimes, because then I'm like, I have 100 things I want to do, and that's not good either. I learned that the hard way, to not just try to do 100 things at once. But you just gotta pick and choose your battle, and whatever excites you, and you've sat on it long enough, you've started the design process, you've started the branding, you've started the marketing, and if it's still, it's like a tattoo, right? Don't just get the tattoo that you love that day. Put it in an album on your phone for a year, and then see if you still like that tattoo, Yeah, that's great. How about you, Andy? Being able to detach from that, I know, is sometimes, for instance, I love your show me nudes ramen shop, and I imagine that if you ever moved away from that, people would be pretty bummed out. Yeah, I think for me, similar. I think
as the brands I evolve, or it's just like a piece of me that's been implemented in that, and people remember that. But I think for me, I'm always looking, how do I look forward? What am I going to do next? How do I disrupt this? How do I get this exciting again? Because it's hard to capture that lightning in a bottle, but I've been fortunate to capture it a few times now, and I guess it's like having kids. You have if you have multiple kids, you still love them. You love them different ways, but you still love them the same. So I enjoy every single project, and I learn a lot from all of it. And some give me bigger headaches than others, but they're lessons that I think are important for my journey.
And it's almost like watching on Instagram and seeing you guys on YouTube and everything. You've almost grown with your brand, and it's almost like we're watching you guys evolve and become, these bigger and better versions of yourself over and over again. Do you think that moving and evolving has kept you so creative, and that's why you've been able to continue that path? It seems like both of you have been very intentional in what you've done. It isn't a lot of just throwing it against the wall, which right now, honestly, I think a lot of like the streetwear world, which is my area, and you've come from that, and you have your own brand, it can be very repetitive and copycatting because it feels safe to do that. But my question is, do you think that this has continued to push you creatively to continue to try new things, new brands, walk away from old ones?
I think so. I think I'm always trying to be the first, in one way or another. I was like, hey, if I'm not the first to do it, then I don't want to do it. If someone else is doing it, I don't want to do it because it's not fun or exciting to me anymore. It's like, am I really chasing the dollar? Or because if I can chase the dollar, there's a lot of other jobs I could probably do than go into restaurants and streetwear. Those are two really tough industries to go into. So I'm just looking at different ways of channeling other ideas that just spark something crazy, and when you execute it once or twice, you're like, hey, this is really cool that you're making a mark in whatever you're doing.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that.
Yeah.
I think it only makes you like stronger to your next company, your next whatever project you're doing. I look at almost a decade of doing NELK right out of high school as just I went to like the best university in the world. You know what I mean? You're going to learn by being hands-on and doing it, and especially at a successful rate like that, you kind of have to just learn quickly, So you kind of take everything you've learned. I mean, I look at life like it's just like the butterfly effect of life has always amazed me, and it's every little thing you've seen or done is like creates the next moment of your life. Even if you're talking just like this conversation is going to affect what I do tomorrow in some way. But yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
You definitely did. And I think it's interesting, too, that how you guys have evolved is also something I think that could be very applicable to the cannabis industry now, because I feel like with everything legally happening, they're constantly evolving as a industry, which I think has made them gritty, and back to what it was back in the day with apparel is like people were a lot more gritty, and they were able to kind of push the boundaries because they didn't really know the boundaries yet. And so what would you guys say to somebody, because I know we all face it at times, when you get stuck doing something, whether you're, you are the CEO of your company, so you're not only the creative brain, but you're the janitor, you're the accounts payable, you're doing it all for a while. What do you tell people when they're like, I am stuck and I just keep circling the drain on the same idea, or we can't get past this? What do you guys suggest to people? Like, what do you do when you're stuck, and what could other people implement when they're stuck creatively?
You want to hit it?
Yeah, I'll go for it. There's a lot of things. I for myself, I work well I work in both stages, right? Sometimes I'll work in calm moments where I'll create when I'm just driving, or I'm talking to my friend about a conversation, something just sparks an idea. But I'll also come up with ideas in my most stressful moments, right? Sometimes you have no choice but to come up. You have to problem solve one or another. And I think there's a solution to everything. You just got to go with your plan A through Z and just continue chopping at it until you find something that works for you. Or, that's usually my method. But I'm working in all stages, whether it's calm or happy or stressed. Sometimes you force creativity out of your best moments and your worst moments.
Yeah, totally. Like working through it almost like a problem where you're like, I just got to move and keep going. How about you, Jesse?
I think the big one would be, I don't know if you can relate to this at all, but like my notes is insane. Like thousands and thousands of notes in my phone, and also just like pieces of paper and a pen everywhere. But sitting down and coming up with the next big idea or the next marketing video idea, like whatever it is, it doesn't really work that way in my opinion. I think they're going to come to you when you're inspired in the moment. And I think there's been so many times I've like woke up in the middle of the night with like an idea. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll write that down in the morning. But then like, it doesn't work that way. Like you got to like get up, go write it down, or like go get your phone. Just even if it's gibberish, just whatever that thought was, like write it in your notes. Because then like one day you're going to go back and be needing an idea, and you can go circle back and, find those gems that were not forced. They just like happened in the moment. And yeah, that's been a big stepping stone. And the other big one would probably be thinking like you're a customer. I do this all the time. I try to like go through my website. I'll go buy a hoodie off one of our drops. I'll just do something that is, I'll go look at my Instagram, but not look at the brand's Instagram as me. I'll just be like, how do I feel about this? Like, what's the vision of this brand? And like, you have to get your head into the space of someone who's not doing this day to day. Like the big thing I've realized is like, someone who like buys your product, there's a high chance that you are like 1% of their life. You know what I mean? But because you live it and breathe it every day with your team, you think all these things matter, and they all like, we can't do this because it's connected to that, and they're going to see this, and this is cheesy because we've done this before, but there's a good chance that they don't know all that. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know if that really makes sense, but just
no, definitely
remembering that there's like different levels of fans of your brand that are absorbing it all different ways. So
yeah, like keeping perspective as to where you're sitting versus where they're sitting, like the lens of your consumer, which I think is really important, because we can get very deep into our own ecosystems for so long. But you had mentioned that you have a good team around you, and Andy, we were talking, you have a team around you, and do you feel that those team members really keep you grounded and authentically you and creatively you? Because both of your brands, when you look at both of your work, it does feel like you, and it feels like you, and no one is really deviating. Oh, did somebody else do that? Is it somebody else? But is your team the one that's keeping you creative and helping you stay focused on that? Or is it more just a self thing? You're self-talking, like, I've got this, chill out. You have a team around you.
I have partners and team members for every single project. I lean on my team for everything. That's why I'm able to be here and have free time to come hang out and talk and do things for myself. Without my team, I would not be able to do. We definitely would not be able to handle what I'm a part of. And they let me run free and come up with crazy ideas and figure out different ways to execute it. But 100% without them, I'm literally nothing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's one of the hardest parts of this is building like a perfect team, and you can't scale that too quick. I think like even passing, no matter what it is, it could be like video to editing to shooting to product development to design, like being able to like fully pass that to someone and be like, hey, I'm hands off, like I trust you. I feel like takes years, but when you do find it, it's like this like amazing partnership where you can kind of oversee what's happening and you can have input, but you completely trust them. And until then, you just got to wear 12 hats and kind of bounce around, and you're basically just coaching them to find the vision that's in your head on this. Because it should stem from someone. I think you can tell when a company eventually is using a name and then like just kind of running and they're not connected, and you don't feel like it's, what a good example would be, but like it's not like 100% they've put their fingerprint on all of this.
Totally. Like when a brand is bought by a big entity and then all of a sudden it changes and people automatically are going to say, oh, well, they sold out and blah, blah, blah. But then you start seeing it and you're like, oh, and maybe it's not selling out, it's scaling, but you're still like, it's not the brand it was at that point. So I hear what you're saying. Staying on being authentically you both have done great projects with partners and collaborators. something I'm very interested in because in my world is, what do you guys do in terms of picking your collaborative partners or your, clients or people that you're going to do business with? And I'm going to say, maybe let's say non-cannabis now, and then if you had a cannabis partner, you don't have to say any brand in here, but you could say like what you would do, like what products. So first question would be, how do you choose your partners? Is it a lengthy process? Are you?
I think it's, do we align with the same values? Do we have the same vision? Do our goals match on what we're trying to accomplish with these brands? I have partners who are chefs. I have partners who are rappers. My partners are world-renowned artists. And I'm working with corporate companies like Sanrio or some anime brands or whatever. So I'm working with a lot of different partners, and everyone has a lot of different opinions, but at the end of the day, do we share the same vision on how we execute this project?
That's great. And do you do that with your team, or is that strictly a decision on your end, or it's a group decision?
And when it comes to partners and putting I think it's the C-suite team level together, that's usually where I come in, and then the rest of my team will start building upon that and who we bring on.
Awesome. How about you, Jesse? Because you've done quite a few projects also and some that are very much you, and then some that you've partnered with people.
Yeah.
And the NELK Boys obviously was, a group.
Yeah. If I was to do something in cannabis and it was working in the background right now, it would be with Rama for sure. 100%. Shout out Rama.
Nice little plug.
And I think the main thing is, I guess, what is that person bringing to the table that is missing from me and the team? I think that's big. Because, if I said, hey, we have to have the same creative vision for it, that's, harder pill to swallow because, I don't know, what I've learned, especially even with clients, is I like to have the keys. I love to, I don't want to, do 50% of this and have this whole vision and then have the marketing bad. Or, just have, there's a voice crack. Nice. I'm glad we got one of those out. But, yeah, just, I like to be able to drive the car, build the car, and, just do the whole thing just so we can creatively make sure the whole project is great. And sometimes I think a partner can be something that's outside of the design and marketing standpoint.
Totally. And I feel like if you both were aligned in the way that they need to kind of match up to what you are looking to do, you both need to be on the same page. I agree with you. It's hard to walk away from a project, but if you're not going to be able to say, well, it should be marketed this way or that way, because it doesn't really matter, right, how cool the product is. If the marketing is terrible or you guys aren't on the same page, it kind of goes out the window.
Very true.
Do you think that, they've already been doing it in cannabis, but do you think that they're primed for more non-cannabis collaborations? I see things that I think they could do.
I think so. I think that's already, a lot of brands that's, people have their eye in this industry, and this is similar to what I saw in streetwear 10, 15 years ago. It's happening here right now. I think along the way it'll be more accepted, and whoever leaps in first is going to, they're watching who's going to be the guinea pig first, and as it continues to work, and I think everyone else is going to, all the big companies will start jumping in.
Definitely. How about you?
No, I agree. I think that the coolest collabs to me are the ones that, on paper would never make sense, and it creates that shock value, but also you're now taking two totally different worlds that the line of creativity just gets extended, because it's how am I going to make, Supreme and Goodyear work, or whatever it is, but to me that's cool. It's going to open up. It's not going to look like cookie cut like any other brand did or any other collab. It's whoa, this is a new door we've never seen. So
totally, coming from opposite sides, that you're able to then be that seems strange. They're doing Wizard, whatever those things, capes for, KitchenAid or something like that. It's a strange pairing, which then starts the conversation.
Yeah, it's a harder task.
Right,
So
and it
now-
looks like a challenge. Like, people are like, why
Yeah.
did that make sense? Like, when, I think it was maybe 12 years ago, when Supreme did that rice cooker, and everybody was like, why did they do a rice cooker?
Or the brick. They sold a brick.
And they
everyone
sold
crazy.
the brick, yeah. And that was a creative way to get people to start a conversation. And that really, sometimes I feel like, is the key, right? And
I feel like that was like a statement from Supreme.
Right?
They were going to drop a brick.
yeah, literally, we're going to drop a brick. Well, then when you talk about like working with collaborators and you start growing that, how do you make sure that you're not like just jumping in for the money? Because I know that that can be hard, and I could see that coming a mile, and you guys could both see it. From like streetwear, it was like that. It was a money grab for some things, not all streetwear, but there, it's hard when you have people that work for you and you're saying, okay, well, we're going to pass on that, even though they're going to give us $1 million.
That's tough, because I guess when I was doing streetwear and I had a brand, and you're in the major doors like Tilly's, PacSun, and Karmaloop, a lot of times they're dictating how you design, right? Because if you don't design how they want it, they're not picking it up, and if they don't pick it up, you can't pay your staff, and you can't pay. There's a lot of factors that go into it, and it's a scary and dangerous territory when you start working that way and doing things for the money. We still have to look at it as a business as well, and try to make the best decision for your company.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest part about a collab that I would say could kill it, especially with a commercial company, is that pushback on design, or how you're going to market it, and like, oh, this is too much, or we can't do this, but yeah. I remember our very first client at Sunday was blanking on the name now. Geez, Brazzers, porn site, which is funny. And we designed them a 10-piece collection that was so good. And
was it closed?
It was closed, yeah.
Oh. And
it wasn't even a collab, just like designing for their site. And yeah, it was like, no hate, but yeah, just someone who's not in design on their side being like, we don't like any of these, and can you add a soccer ball to this one? And we're like, okay, well, like, this isn't what we're trying to do here. Like, we're trying to just like give us the keys, let us design, let us have fun with it. And because if there is a weird thing with the studio model that I learned right when I started this. Sorry to go on a rant right now, but
no, please.
You got to understand what you're trying to do, because what I learned was we want people to see the creative stuff that we're doing and like really, really fuck with it. If I'm allowed to swear, sorry, but the really like this.
They're smoking weed outside. I think you could say the F word.
Awesome. Like, make sure that that's why they're coming to you, and that's the business that I want to run. Because if they just want someone who knows how to design, and then they tell you the vision, and you don't think the vision's cool, there's no real benefit besides a paycheck. And for us, especially launching fairly new, it was resume building and trying to find what our image and our style and what we're like known for. So, and also I'm grateful enough to be in a position where I don't really have to like do something just for the check. So, yeah, it was a lesson we learned right off the bat.
I love that. I think a lot of times, and I'm sure that they're dealing with it now in cannabis because, there's a lot of money in, money out, money in, money out. One question that we kind of talked about earlier was, how do you keep by overdoing the creative, overdoing the product? Because already you have brands, dispensaries, growers that are sitting on product, right? And then they bring in more product like merchandise and apparel. Andy, you had mentioned outside when we were chatting that like with Trillburger, you brought that to Bored and Hungry, that model, the way you did it. Could you kind of expand on how you felt that kept you from deviating and going off the rails? And then Jesse, I'd love to like tag on to that for you later.
Yeah, when we did Trillburgers, we had a simple product that we've been developing for a long time. And when I had the idea to open that Bored and Hungry restaurant, I didn't want to go too crazy on the product where it would look overdone. I wanted to focus on, hey, we have a superior product. This is an award-winning product. We will play around with the packaging to make it look fun, but we'll keep everything else as simple as possible. And just focus on what people love. They love burgers and fries and milkshakes and drinks, and I didn't want to take away from that, and just focus on doing what we did best. And yeah, that's why I didn't develop another burger. I was like, we're just going to use this one.
But you did it in such a creative way that it didn't look like the Trill burger. People forgot about that based off of your packaging, the inside, the merch you were selling.
Yeah,
people didn't know that it was Trill burger, but you did, and it kept it from going off the rails.
Yeah, the packaging was a big part. We wanted to make sure that it looked good and looked fun and it looked cool. We wanted to show people that we weren't just a mom and pop shop. Like if you saw this, you'd be like, whoa, these guys look like they have 100 stores. So that's what we kind of wanted to do with the product, and kind of put this, how do you make this NFT thing look fun, or how do you get people engaged to try to learn more about it? I think we did a pretty good job of that.
And with Jesse, looking at your product that you currently have, you guys don't over skew or do the most. You're not over designing, being overly creative. What would your advice be to someone who might be, wanting to start more, but they're in the cannabis industry right now? Would you say maybe just focus in on one product offering or one style or a few styles, and then grow from there, similar to what Andy did, where he's like, I'm going to take my Trill burger and I'm going to bring it to Port and Hungry? Because I do think that that's a question I get a lot, and I got one today about that. Oh, do you think I should do more merch? I'm like, maybe, but I don't know how much inventory you're sitting on.
No, I agree. I think, it's like you take an artist or anyone, right? And then they do merch, and then they do tours, and then they have a book, and then they do all these things, and they're just checking the boxes off. But if a kid starting a cannabis brand or a streetwear brand came up to me and asked me, I would just be like, don't just check off the boxes and just do, we need, all the streetwear silhouettes and then all this. It's like, the best thing you could do is spend this first year of your company and make one product that's game changing. Do one cut and sew piece that no one's really thought of, that twist on it. I think one hit is that you actually care about and you think is dope is way, it's just holds heavier in weight than just, checking off the boxes. And when you were saying about the not over designing thing, at our warehouse we have this big cork wall, and it has all the collections throughout the year on it. And I'm sure you've experienced this too, where you got to always be 6 months to a year ahead. Some companies like Oakley and stuff are probably 3-4 years ahead. And the thing that's tough with that is you have to sometimes, when you get closer to actually putting the PO in, you have to remember how stoked you all were about that design, about that concept, because sometimes you're like, is this whack? Let's pull this off. Let's change this. And then you're excited about this new piece you're putting up, but no one else saw the other thing you designed. You've just been staring at it for a year, and now you think it's old news. But it's kind of a game, mental game you have to play with yourself and the team, for sure.
Totally. It's like a complete mental game, because then you're starting to say oh, that's boring, and you're staring at it, like you said, forever, and you're like, nobody's going to like this, and you have that time to think about it.
Yeah.
But I love that you had mentioned just to how you guys kind of look at it, but you have to have some perspective a little bit of who's actually seeing it.
Because sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good. Kind of like the tattoo thing I was saying. You're like, okay, I don't know if I like that idea.
Did it need to be on my lower back? Probably not. But okay, so just to kind of wrap this up, because you guys were so full of knowledge, if you could give any piece of advice on how to maybe spark creativity in a non-conventional way, what would you do? Would you say go for a hike, or go swim with a shark, or go sit with someone else who does a craft, throws clay? Is there anything that you would recommend to someone to do that you did in the past? Because I think a lot of times when you're in your own ecosystem, you forget. You're just like, I don't have time for that. I have to go pick the kids up. I have to go get the frozen burgers. I got to do all of that. I'm sure they're not frozen, but
Definitely not frozen. For me lately, it's I've taken running on. Running has been my new thing. I ran 17 miles last week, and that definitely, I was just thinking about survival mode after mile 11, 12. But after that run, obviously my brain cleared, and all the brain fog I had cleared out of the way, and got things done and worked on a lot of different ideas. So I think whatever for anybody, just a hot shower, a cold shower, whatever it takes to clear that brain fog, anything that helps. I think it's a lot of different parts. Sometimes driving and listening to music, new music, old music, something that will just randomly spark something that as an idea to help you work. And like he said, he takes notes. I write notes on my phone all the time. I do voice notes so I don't forget things, especially when I'm driving. I'm not going to type it down, so I start just talking. And it's good to listen to yourself over again later on. You're like, oh, I didn't know I was even saying that, and it's pretty crazy to hear. But I try to pull inspiration from everywhere, even traveling around the world. I'll see a lot of crazy things that you would never see here in the U.S. And you're like, what the hell? Like, why does that not exist here? And if I were to do something like that, what would I add to it, or how would I put my own touch on it? So, just taking inspiration from everything.
Love that. And like walking away from it, probably a little bit, like walking away from the project, so that you're not like staring at the corkboard for 3 months.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with what he said. I think it's as corny as it sounds, getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of your circles. Like, if I like training MMA, I like running, I like skateboarding, and I love working. But if I don't try other things, I'm not going to see other worlds and see other takes on it. We have the internet. Use it. I think there's like tons of inspiration there all over the place. A big one is like monitoring who you follow, say, on Instagram. If you're a person that has 3-4 hours a day of use on Instagram, and I think it's like, try to control, even if you have to make a burner account to just follow like inspirational pages, I think, so you're just constantly seeing stuff that could spark something. And kind of back to what I was saying with the notes, I think taking the time to write it down, no matter what time it is, has been huge for me. And I guess it's also going back and actually going through those notes too. So when you are in a funk, like what I do is I kind of categorize them too. So if it's like, it could be like TV, film ideas, it could be marketing ideas, it could be a design idea, it could be a brand idea, an app idea, like whatever it is, and you're like, oh, like, why am I writing this down? I don't need to make an app. I'm not making a cannabis company. And then 3 years later, you get a great connection, and you go look back at those notes, and you're like, oh, I got a great idea for this. So, yeah, that'd be my advice.
I think last for me is they always say if you look at your 5 closest friends or who you're surrounding yourself with, that natural energy, just feed off of them. If you stick yourself around 5 super creative people and you're around them for like a month, you'll be surprised of how much you're shifting and changing and how much your mind changes. So yeah, if you look at your 5 closest friends, you're mostly likely going to be into the same music, same games, a lot of similarities. So I, of course, hang around with a lot of entrepreneurs and creatives and keep myself in that headspace. And you're naturally going to, no one wants to be the weakest link in the group, so you're going to naturally compete. I was like, I don't want to be the worst of my group. I'm going to step my game up right now.
That's great, yeah. Who you surround yourself with is, I mean, even outside of business and creativity, I feel like who you're around creates who you are, for sure. For me, even like with the whole NELK thing, doing that for 10 years, and it was great, and I love those guys, but it eventually, I just didn't feel like at home in that lifestyle with those people. I didn't see eye to eye. I didn't think some things were as funny as they used to be. I needed a new crew, and like I'm thankful for my crew that are here right now at Sunday, and yeah, they're all great guys, and I don't know, they motivate me every day, so it's great.
That's awesome. You guys, this was really amazing chatting with you, and it really truly showed like how trusting the process really works. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it works, but it does. It seems like you both have been extremely successful by following your intuition and what you believe in creatively, what your values are. It seems that you guys really took that into account when you did this, and it truly shows by everything you both have done, and it's very impressive. And I thank you both so much for your time and walking us through your creative process and thinking, and I'm really happy I got to be here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.